of the Committee of the Whole regarding Bill numbers 180162, 180163, 180164, and Resolution number 180185. Mr. Stitt, would you please read the title of the bills and the resolution, please?
Bill number 180162, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2019 through 2024 inclusive. Bill number 180163, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2019 capital budget. Bill number 180164, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2019. Resolution number 180185, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2019 through 2023 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2018, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council, approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Stitt. Today we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole, considering the bills read by the clerk that constitute the proposed operating and capital spending measures for the fiscal year 2019, a capital program and forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2019 through fiscal year 2024. Today we will hear testimony from the following departments: the CAO, Public Property Procurement, Human Resources Department. First is up would be the Chief Administration Officer of the City of Philadelphia. If anybody here wishes to testify or from the administration for the CAO, please approach the bench. State your name for the record, and you may proceed with your testimony, please.
You can always adjust the mic too.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Christine Drinick-Lopez. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer. Good morning, Councilman Heenan and members of City Council. As I stated, my name is Christine Drinick-Lopez, Chief Administrative Officer. Joining me today is Dwayne Gordon, my First Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, and my Chief of Staff, Stephanie Tipton. I am pleased to provide testimony on the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer's fiscal year 2019 operating budget. The proposed fiscal year 2019 general fund budget totals $6,169,329, a decrease of $1,972,126 over fiscal year 2018 estimated obligation levels. This decrease is primarily due to the deduction of $2.5 million in a one-time funding provided in FY18 for the parking amnesty program, and is partially offset by allocations in Class 100 and 200 described in my budget detail. The CAO centers its work in several strategic areas, providing technical assistance to city departments focused on modernizing business processes, helping departments build their capacity to innovate, and transforming government operations to make them more efficient and effective. As you review our submitted testimony and supporting budget detail, you will see that our FY19 budget reflects investment in these areas. The CAO's Human Resources and Talent Unit, also known as HR&T, will continue to support the exempt employee recruiting efforts of all city departments. In FY18, HR&T led the implementation of a new exempt hiring process, which is designed to provide department leaders with best practice guidelines and tools to source, interview, and integrate a high-quality, diverse workforce. HR&T continues to support city departments' sourcing efforts by sharing all job opportunities on web platforms such as Smart Recruiters and DiversityJobs.com. The CAO will continue to partner with city departments to modernize their operations by identifying efficiencies, utilizing technology, and providing a customer-focused approach. In FY18, we implemented technology solutions to automate aspects of the city's contracting process, as well as internal processes such as the city's physician request process. We are also continuing to work to address the issue of slow pay, an issue of particular importance to small, local MWDSBE businesses. The CAO's original focus was on reducing the amount of time it takes to conform a city contract. I am pleased to share that we have fully rolled out e-signatures, resulting in nearly reducing the amount of time it takes to conform a contract by 1/2. We are now exploring the invoicing process and plan to implement changes to this process throughout the remainder of the calendar year. Lastly, the Office of Open Data and Digital Transformation will continue its redesign of the city's website and plans to take beta to phila.gov this calendar year. This redesign, known as beta.phila.gov, will make it easier for residents to find and understand the information and services they need without having to know which department provides them. Currently, Beta serves 47% of all page views to cities' websites. In FY19, ODDT will also continue to publish data sets that make city government more transparent, drive business, improve service delivery, and/or facilitate civic engagement. In FY19, the CAO will continue to drive change through the initiatives I've highlighted this morning, as well as those described in our submitted testimony. We have accomplished much since the department was first created in FY17, and we look forward to working with departments to identify areas of improvement that will yield immediate benefits and create measurable efficiencies. This concludes my testimony. My team and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else testifying along with you, Christine, or is...
No, it's just my my first deputy, my chief of staff, and then if we have any questions, I'll bring someone up. Thank you.
So I'm going to go back and forth for just a little bit and then yield it over to some colleagues who might have to roll on out of here for a meeting in the office. Your department was newly created in FY17, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. How has your department increased its efficiencies with the city government in its first fiscal year? How has it increased it, and how did you measure it?
So I would say where we started was in the contracting process. The contracts unit is part of the CAO's office, and then obviously procurement is one of our portfolio departments. So we really, we essentially got rid of paper in the process and we automated it. As a result of, we use the tech solution DocuSign for professional services contracts, e-signatures, and we fully rolled that out in November of last year across the entire government, and we've been able to see a reduction in those steps by half. So we've gotten some really great feedback from businesses. It's a mobile platform, so businesses can sign online. The first business to use the platform actually signed the contract in an airport. It was an IT contract. So that we've spent a lot of time. We also implemented ePay for procurement contracts. We started looking at other internal city processes. Most large organizations, if you want to fill a vacancy, there's a position requisition process. That was a very paper-intensive process, so we've automated that using the company is called Floxu. It's a small startup out of Uruguay, actually. And so we've utilized that platform to do a lot of workflow changes. That's to name a few.
Okay, thank you. Adam, I'm happy to hear that we're centralizing, the training efforts in the learning management system. In some of our meetings over the last year, you have highlighted that there are some departments who average 6 months or more behind the starting time to renew and extend contracts that they hold. Aside from this being a very bad model for delivery of government services, I think it comes down to either a staffing issue or the lack of proper training of the contract officers. Can you explain if any changes are being made to address this issue, and what plan moving forward over the next 2-3 years, not short term but longer term, unless you have some short term benchmarks that are going to be in place to bring these contract execution dates into compliance?
So that's a good point. We do measure, so we have a goal that 50% of all contracts will be conformed within 30 days, but we realized that was an aspirational goal. And so we do track how departments do based on 30, 60, 90, up to 180 days. We are seeing the trend slowly ticking down. I do think it's going to take time to do that, and I do think things like e-signature will be helpful. To your point about the training, we did get feedback internally that there's been a lot of turnover and that a lot of the staff really needed some refresher training, or even some, like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? So I think about 3 months ago, we implemented a citywide training program. It's a speaker series, so we do fundamental how to do contracts, the basics right now, and then we have a guest speaker. We've had OEO, we've had the law department, risk management, labor standards, and really just trying to increase our internal capacity within the government to help things become more efficient.
Is it a voluntary speaker series attendance, or is it mandatory for supervisors that really have the hands-on and control of the contracts?
So right now it's voluntary, but we have a waiting list. So we haven't had to mandate it yet. The other thing we do is we do keep an eye on the numbers. And so when we do see there's a problem, we'll actually schedule a meeting with the department, and then generally after that meeting, there's a great interest in the staff attending the meetings. There's greater partnership, and we're happy to lean in and really help the department get very acclimated in the systems.
So last year, there was conversations about prompt pay and people not paying. Systems have been created like the e-signature, and I think that's been very successful, although, the 50% has been, it's high, aspirational, but I don't see it not being reached in the near certain future, as long as we get trained. So we have e-pay, we have, your e-contracts, right, in procurement. Last year, what did we start off with our average delay in pay, and where are we at now? You said, so our goals were to get within 30 days. So where have we moved the needle from 180-day average pay to where? All right, because my concern is, one, we're basing our budget off of program budgeting, and we're moving towards better efficiencies through technology, which is extremely important and necessary. I just want to make sure that we're moving the needle, especially for emerging contractors or emerging businesses, small businesses who are really trying to break into government, who shied away from it before because they thought it was, the good old boy network, and which it is not. I mean, it's not 1950, but people just can't float payrolls, right, for products or services. So how has the needle moved within the last year?
Yep. So as far as conformance of contracts, in FY16, our average day was about 74 days. And this is the point when we send the contract to the vendor. Right now, we're between 24 and 38 days, and our goal was 30. So we're pretty confident we could hit 30.
Great.
Because DocuSign didn't go into full effect until November. So
Okay.
we're really confident. As far as prompt pay, this was in the spirit of accelerating at the pace we pay our vendors. And we realized that if we didn't have a conformed contract, it took us longer to pay the vendors. So that was one component, but we realized this was going to be a really big project and has a lot of tentacles to it, for lack of better words. So I'm going to ask my First Deputy, Dwayne Gordon, to talk about what he's launched this year regarding our prompt pay, slow pay.
So far...
Could you state your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry.
Just for this.
Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy CAO.
How you doing, Dwayne?
So far, we just got started on slow pay. And so what we wanted to do initially was understand end-to-end what that process looks like. And so we've been able to create a high-level process map. Along the way, we've engaged key stakeholders to help us identify where the gaps and pain points are. So we've met with Commerce, D&I, we've met with several departments, we've met with Treasury, Finance, Controller, and probably a few more. And so we actually have a meeting today to present our findings as far as where we are now. We have a June deadline as far as doing our discovery and then presenting our next steps as far as strategy in our proposal. And so from there, we're looking at a December date as far as having something delivered to get things moving.
So could you provide for the chair anything that's not proprietary, some of the findings and discoveries and next steps before the end of our budget process here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Brondell Reynolds Brown.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Please remind us how long you've been in your current role.
So I was appointed permanently approximately a year ago.
1 year ago?
Yes, ma'am.
And so in that 12 months, what would you identify as your proudest achievement thus far?
To be honest with you, I feel really proud about my team.
Forgive me?
I feel really proud about my team and my people. I just think everybody's very committed to the work we do and really committed to what we're trying to accomplish here, and I just think we can't get it done without them. So, I had an opportunity to hire some folks on my hire, and I've just been thrilled with the process and thrilled with how we work together.
And when you say hire, you mean staff exempt positions?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Okay. And based on my observation, it appears that you are seeking to punctuate and align your actions with the interests of the mayor, and that is to grow a government that seeks to look like the city of Philadelphia, and that needs to be recognized simply by those at your witness table.
Thank you, Councilman, I appreciate that. Yes, we're all committed to diversity and inclusion, for sure.
Going forward, what would you identify as your 1 or 2 top priority over the next 24 months?
Yep, so I've actually been thinking about this question a little bit. So I think I really want to become more proactive rather than reactive. So I've really been trying to think about how we can create a toolbox, if you will, for departments where they can approach us and say, here's my business problem, and we could easily engage with them and say, here's some potential tools for you to solve for that in a very inexpensive way. I still feel like we're playing defense rather than offense.
Okay.
And I would really like to flip that. And then the other thing is, I think in the tech space, we're a significant contributor to the tech ecosystem. I think the city is. We have a lot of tech talent that I think, at least I'm really proud of. I think the city should be really proud of. And so I think we've got to find other ways to engage our team with the external tech ecosystem and engage the tech ecosystem with some of the internal problems we have and see if there's some synergies to creatively solve them.
Okay.
That, if I can get those 2 things done this year, I think that would be a big deal.
So we'll look forward to the progress report a year from now.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you very much. Short question. I just wanted to ask where they have their English as a second language class, and I wanted to know if your programs, what languages, or maybe for further down. I'm trying to verify what languages what languages do we help here in the city when we're trying to deal with second language people.
So we do have a language access plan. So we have 2 public-facing departments. Our Bureau of Administrative Adjudication uses the Parking Authority's language access plan. We do have some staff there that do speak other languages other than English. I'm happy to get you a list of that. I don't have it here in front of me. We also have our Office of Administrative Review, and they use our language line service, and they fall under our language access plan. And then we also have staff internally with the CAO's office and open data digital transformation. And obviously when we digitally communicate, we're also thinking about individuals that speak English as a second language. So I'm happy to kind of map all that out and submit it to the chair, if that would be okay.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to follow up on Councilman Heenan and Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown's questions on Given that I just want to make sure I understand, the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer oversees 10 other departments, basically, that report to them?
Correct.
And so you have a budget of salaries that are approaching $4 million. Just salaries, not including fringe benefits. And if I were to say to you, tell me the 5 most dollar productive implementations this department has created in the last 2 years, and how much in dollars we've saved, can you put that list together or give me an idea of how this $4 million expense can be translated to savings in actual dollars?
So when I think about where we invest our human capital, it's mainly in 2 areas. One is in hearing officers. So for folks that want to appeal their parking tickets, and then other hearing appeals such as like a streets department, a litter citation. So I'm not sure I can quantify financially the savings there because they're physically hearings and it's a service that we have to serve the public. The other area is open data digital transformation. And I think the opportunity is creating efficiencies about how our residents, the public, digitally communicate with us. Because right now, I think it's really hard to do business with the city or even to get information from the city. And I think the investment is to find those efficiencies and then repurpose so we can get rid of some more of this paper. I just think there's so much opportunity to find more efficiencies. I'm not sure.
But let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Can we challenge you to go into every department that you oversee and say, I need to figure out how to do this for 10% less through technology? That's what I see as the main goal of the Chief Administrative Officer, along with other things. But how do we handle different departments, whether it's procurement or Office of Administrative Review or Bureau of Administrative Education, whatever it is? How do we lower our overhead 10% with using technology? I mean, that should be our goal. Because what we keep doing, I keep saying this, is that we keep adding technology and we keep adding expense. I've yet to see someone come in here and say, including CAMA, which I still don't understand, how we spend $9 million for CAMA and not cut our overhead, okay? When this year, we were able to complete almost 90% of the assessments without CAMA. How do we put CAMA in place and not save money? So that's going to be my challenge for your department, to come up with savings that are specific, because we can't keep spending money. Can't continue. I have a few more questions. Last year's testimony, you mentioned a new internal management process. It's called Performance Philly. What's the timeline? Has that been implemented, or where does that stand right now?
So last fiscal year, the Performance Management Office was part of the CAO's office, and then in FY17 it was moved to the Managing Director's office. So Angelina Ruffin leads that team, and she's working for the Managing Director. So I'm happy to follow up with them to get information for you. She doesn't report my portfolio.
Right. But to your knowledge, has it been implemented?
I can't speak to detail. I mean, I meet with Angelina. She's an amazing resource for our department,
Okay.
but specifically, I'm not.
Okay, we can find out.
Yeah,
Maybe we can find that out.
Offer.
And on the e-procurement system you were speaking of earlier, and I know we have DocuSign now,
Correct.
did that create any specific dollar savings we can point to?
There were some dollar savings. They were not significant. We were able to negotiate the cost of an envelope down to what we originally paid. And then what we did look at is what it costs to mail contracts, because traditionally departments would mail the contracts, they were around $15, and so now we're below $5. So they're not significant, but there is some dollar savings.
And as of last year, e-procurement was launched, I think, in 10 departments you mentioned last year.
Yep.
How many additional departments have been moved over this year, and how many more need still to be moved over?
So procurement will have that information.
Well, while we're waiting for them, I want to ask you another question just to make my time efficient. The reverse auction procurement that was implemented,
Mhm.
I think Councilman Heenan talked about it. Have we seen any specific dollar savings that we can tie to that process?
We have seen, I can send you information, we have seen some dollar savings. It's been, in some instances, it's been a great resource, and in other, I mean, we've tried it, and in other instances, it's not worked out as well. But, you know, we wanted to try it, and in some areas, it's been great. Like the recycling bins, for example, it's been great. There's been other things, we've tried some in Fleet, it didn't work out.
So here's where you could be helpful, I think. We need to change the culture of how people think. We need to start coming to these budget meetings, and when you've done 4 or 5 things, and tell us we've saved X, 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 and X, which total Y, and therefore our budget can be reduced by this amount, and give us concrete information. And we need people to start thinking that way, versus the pot is, you know, unlimited and we can keep spending money.
No, I appreciate it. I think the challenge is the dollars have not been significant, like with DocuSign. It's just not, and it's also, it's just not been significant to have that kind of change. And even with reverse auction, I'm not sure I see the amount of money. I feel like, I agree with you, culturally, it is the right way to move and to think about it. I just think it's more of a long-term investment to get there.
Okay, maybe I have that answer to the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nicholas Suzy, Deputy Commissioner, Procurement Department. So currently, we have 19 agencies using PHL contracts, the e-procurement system. By the end of this month, we'll have another 10 added to that, so 29. And the goal is by the end of June or early this coming fiscal year, we'll be completely rolled out to the city.
Will we achieve those goals?
Yeah, we're on track to achieve those
Okay,
goals.
thank you. That's very good. Thank you. Thank you. Another question I have is the CAO. When was the CAO created? Do you remember?
So I wasn't here, but I believe at the onset of county administration it was created.
So what year was that?
So January 2016.
And the number of employees in this department, how is that? Has that grown over the last 2 years? How has that grown?
No, it's not. I mean, other than,
Stable?
no, it has not grown.
Okay. Another question I have for you, because I mean, we have right now in this department, is it around 61 employees? In your budget, I just want to make sure I understand, on purchase of services, maybe I missed this answer, you may have already answered it, but I noticed that it's been reduced by $2,100,000. And it said, can you explain the reason for that reduction? You may have explained this already.
For the reduction? So we were legislated to stand up a parking amnesty program. And so the effective date of that program was March 1st to run through April 20th. And so we needed the funding to stand that program up. And then it was a one-time program, so it was for the program and then it ends.
So you have in your financials $2.5 million. Was all that money used or a portion of it used?
So the program's still ongoing. We're going to reconcile after it ends with the parking authority, and then we'll have a sense about how much of it was spent. The city's never done a program like this before, so you know, we met with the revenue department and we made some projections based on the information they shared, but we really will know after it's over how much it really
How much have
cost.
we used so far of that 2.5?
So 1.08 is, and it hasn't been used. It's what we know is committed. I think that's a better way to frame it.
So there's a high probability we might not use the whole 2.5.
I don't know yet. I mean, we'll know after the program's over and we evaluate.
When's the program deadline for that?
So April 30th, the program ends, and then we always anticipated operationally there'll still be some additional work to do to finish things out, because we're going to take folks up until 6 o'clock on,
Well, there's 2 weeks left, basically, and $1 million has been used of a $2.5 million budget that started, when, a month ago?
started March 1st.
Right, 6 weeks ago. So I don't think the full $1.5 million is going to be used up.
We don't have PPA's numbers yet.
Okay,
So I don't have all the information. I don't have the sheriff's numbers yet.
okay. One other question. I'll wait till the next round. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
Good morning. Good morning,
Good morning.
Christine. A couple of weeks ago, during the beginning of our capital review, I asked you a couple of questions regarding some of the procurement reform efforts in the public discussion we've been having. Do you have the authority not to conform a contract for noncompliance?
Do I have the authority to not conform a contract for noncompliance? I think what generally happens is if there is concerns, members of the contracts unit or the procurement department will contact the department, the law department, and the other agencies, and then start a broader discussion. That's generally my experience.
So you've never been able to say, look, this is a bad actor, this is somebody who's been problematic, non-compliant, over budget, we shouldn't, when the decision is made, have you ever stopped something and questioned the department?
So we've never had the mechanism in place, the vendor performance module, which we did implement, and we just stood up. And that is going to inform those kind of discussions where we'll be in a position to really push the departments.
So that is a self-reporting mechanism for departments to populate the data system?
So we are becoming, I wouldn't say it's self-reporting. I feel that we're being more prescriptive about ensuring that the departments do report feedback on the vendor's performance. Also, when best value or when we implement right now it's Public Works, the vendors have to submit their performance in the past 3 opportunities. So,
how long will that be fully implemented, and when do we expect to see some of those data sets?
I would think probably in the fall we'll probably be positioned. I mean, it's going to start small, which I think we talked about last year. So it's definitely going to start small. It's change, and we really wanted people to embrace it and adopt it because it's something important to us. So I think...
Do you think it's important to departments?
I think it's really hard to just get work done, and you have us central agencies pulling them in 40 different directions. And I just think we have to own some of the responsibility to help them work this out. Because I do think it's important, but I think they have a lot on their plate, and it's hard to manage.
So, right. So one of my concerns is at what point, so both you and I both know that all of the decision-making really happens at departments, how RFPs are designed, how they're informed. And, you know, we keep having this, what comes first, right? And I know people just want to get their jobs done, but at what cost, right? So right now we're in a situation where we have, you know, $10 billion capital program, a $4.something billion water department program. So everybody keeps using this, I want to get it done, as a reason why we don't put a pause on it and get it done better. Not the perfect. So if you had one tool at your disposal to help us better meet those numbers that you currently don't have, what would that be?
If I had one tool at my disposal. I think we have to make it easier for departments. And so some tech solution to help departments do that.
So do you think it is fair to say that by now we should have standards across the board about some of the cost structures related to our contract?
So I think that's complicated to do, and I think it depends on industry, right? So immediately, because of my airport experience.
But if we're giving them the discretion to manage their pieces and they won't give us standards, who's going to do the standards?
So I think it depends on what the standards are, though. I mean, we're setting the standard for vendor performance, on time, on budget.
But you're doing the paper piece, right? And I think Councilman Dahm alludes to this. It's sort of like, how do we ensure that technology builds efficiencies as opposed to putting a bad system in technology so you don't get the efficiencies, right? So my concern is we have departments that we've given a lot of discretion to, and we can't seem to align the aspirational goals of the mayor, the frustration of council to get it done. So my thing is, at what point do standards get developed? And that, you know, I know that when our controller Rebecca initiated this unit, it was with that promise that we would get to some standards. We're in year and a half, and we still, I don't know where that's going to get initiated from. Because when I ask the questions department by department, if they want the discretion to develop RFPs, to design their projects based on the uniqueness, is it not fair for us to have standards, and who's going to set those standards?
So you're talking specifically about RFPs, right?
I'm talking about cost. We've inflated the market of cost. When I get projects penciling up, and the estimates that we're getting, $450 a square foot, to all of these things, shouldn't we have some standards? I feel like the market is driving us
Okay.
versus us driving them. So what happens first? Who sets up the standards?
So I will be honest with you, we focused a lot on the process and making the process more efficient. And I know the budget office is interested in us partnering with them to look at the capital process. I think it would be helpful to understand, is the time, like where's the time best spent? Is it finding the more efficiency, more transparency in the process, or is it leaning in and really defining some standards, which is going to take a cross-functional, very technical team, I think, across the city? I think it can be done for sure.
So when I ask departments about what kind of matrix, what kind of data set should we be requesting, right? Because it's so big, right? But I think transparency is one, right? If we only have 12 contractors and they're milking us, we should know that, and that should be public, right?
I agree.
And the excuse of these are the only people who have capacity because we only RFP it in a certain way, so they're the only ones who have capacity. So what comes first? Our commitment to debundling and local purchasing, local hiring, our commitment to diversity, and the fact that that comes at a premium, which is why we're doing best values, or our commitment to try to get stuff done on time, which means we've inflated the market and we'll only do business with a few people because of the way we're designing stuff. I mean, what comes first?
Yeah, I don't think the same old is the way to go. And I do think creating transparency and setting our expectations, because I'm not sure we've done that, at least from my perspective. So I think in setting our expectations about what is going to be acceptable performance for us, which is why I do think Best Value is an amazing opportunity for us with the vendor performance module. I appreciate your frustration that we're not moving fast enough. Mm-hmm. I do.
Just a lot of money. We're mortgaging off as we borrow and we borrow. And, the numbers are going backwards in terms of the trajectory of where we are. Or where we've been, where we've aspired to be, right? And quite frankly, we're, putting bigger numbers, if we're not going to generate it because we don't have a contracting system to allow it, is setting ourselves up for failure, right? And so it's good, we'll debate it 2 years, we'll set up goals we know we can't reach, right? We'll continue to set up contracts, we know the universe of who can comply because of our paying and of everything else. I just feel like we're spinning our wheels, right? And as much as I want to see the performance module work, I think there's some matrix data that we need to be transparent about now, so that we're realistic as opposed to just saying to council what we want to hear, and know that we can't meet those numbers because we're not set up that way. So. All of that to say that I think we need to have some discussions around some of this RFP standards, and how we conform some of these contracts. And I do think we need the transparency. Will your performance measure system allow us, or is there any place where I could go and see who's doing what work for the city, and what level of compliance they're in right now? For any department.
So you're talking about OEO compliance?
Mm-hmm.
So in ACES, you can see who's doing work with the city, and I believe in OEO's annual report.
Not the annual report,
no?
Ongoing. I mean,
ongoing.
think part of the problem that we have is the departments don't talk to each other, right? So we have the same 12 vendors on all streets, water, and everything. And where's the interface happen? I mean, I expected this CAO to have that
Yep.
interface piece.
So one of the other things we've done to create additional transparency is in PHL contracts, you can see all of the opportunities and even some.
Now, I want to know who's working, and I want to know if they're on time, if they're running over budget. I
Yeah.
want to know who that is. At what point do we not add that level of transparency in this discussion?
So one of the things that
Your name for the record.
Dwayne Gordon, Deputy CAO. So one of the things that we started to talk about at a very high level, and we want to see it through, is looking at it from a demand management perspective. So what we mean by that is that as these projects, come to light and we are made aware of them, what we want to do is create toll gates along the way, right? So if you say, there's a project for X, okay, let's figure out who the stakeholders are, what X really means, scoping it out and so forth. Every step of the way, as far as demand management, there would be a cost to it. So we can control costs better at that point, right? So as we get to each toll gate, we require a yes or a no, if we want to proceed or not. Doing all that, we can have projections, we can have estimates and so forth. We can have those type of conversations. Along the way, after we get through to a certain point, we can look at, is this a project that we really want to do? What's the ROI and so forth? Once the project is moved forward to actually where we're doing the work or people are doing the work, we can put in toll gates along the way as well, so that if we need to do quarterly updates, monthly updates and so forth, we can see who's actually doing the work at that point. But this is something that we can do at a high level from the administrative perspective, but we would need to bring in all key stakeholders at that point to make sure that we're all on the same page, that there's complete buy-in into this new way forward.
Okay, I'll wait for my next round, because I don't see the political will anywhere. Every time department to department, I get a glazy-eyed look. I've been part of this conversation 10 years. I listened to Councilman Good for 20. I've listened to my colleague, Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds-Brown. I don't see the political will, because until people are given some standards, and that's what performance-based budgeting is supposed to be about, which we're not doing, and there's an incentive by which efficiencies are obtained so that we can do reinvestments based on those goals, I just don't see it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I want to continue some of the questions that my colleague, Councilwoman Sanchez, raised in reference to technology and how we're using technology within the 10 departments that you oversee. Last week, we had the Office of Information Technology testify and was somewhat perplexed in their responses to some of the answers. I understand they're in a transition interim period, but when I asked questions in reference to cloud-based tools for sharing information and resources like Salesforce, although that's one of many tools that can be used in that regard, they seemed somewhat at a loss in reference to that conversation. So I want to get some perspective from you, considering that you have oversight of both OIT and some other departments, and I do want to commend the work you've been doing regarding best value and e-contract Philly and using those tools as a better way to get things done from a time savings perspective. However, I think there's more that can be done, and I think OIT is one of those departments, and listening to some of the comments made by Councilman Sanchez, I just have some concerns in reference to how we're moving forward.
So good morning, Councilman. So I think every tech solution depends on the scenario, but obviously if something's cloud-based, it makes total sense. Our position requisition system I referenced, that's a cloud-based solution. And what I particularly like about cloud-based solutions is they're fairly cost-effective in those instances. Salesforce it's a great CRM. It's one of many great CRMs, but I think we're open to exploring any opportunities and getting things on the table for us.
I mean, it also kind of goes back to some of the points that Councilman Diamond made. For example, I learned somewhat recently that when we moved forward 301, we had purchased Salesforce in order to use 301. And there are some licenses that we are we paid for that we're not actively using.
Yep.
And so those licenses, along with maybe an administrator and purchase some additional licenses and a setup fee, or they'll say a consultant come in to set up some initial steps, we really could use it in a much robust way in reference to how we just communicate in reference to zoning issues, health department issues, revenue issues, so we don't have a situation where I, as a applicant on a zoning matter or some other application matter with the city, I'm waiting on an issue because it's in someone's email inbox, waiting for it then to be viewed and then sent to someone else. And we're sending PDF files back and forth via email when there are CRM systems that are much more efficient that allow various departments to see what's going on in real time and allow the customer being constituents to get better service. And I think the employees would be happier because they don't have to continue to go back to frustrated customers who are waiting for information and there's a delay. And I just don't see the urgency, going back to Councilman Sanchez said, the urgency to use these tools as what they are. And I think that's one of the concerns that I see in just in the city government as a whole, that people work in silos and we don't want to get out of silos. So using that and wants to shift to best value, how is best value being implemented through other departments in the city and what resistance are you receiving?
So right now we have two best value opportunities. One is in the water department and one is a concession at the airport. They're both still going through the process. I don't think the results are back, or the proposers are back in on the airport opportunity, but in the water opportunity, the number of proposers went up, which I think is great because, as we all know, increasing competition generally leads to better dollars for the city. So the vendor performance, the metrics are in there. And so this will be the first time we test it about how these firms have delivered on their previous projects and their DB goals as well. So I'm pretty excited to see how we make out, and I really commend the water in the airport for being our guinea pigs, for lack of better words.
Right, and following with Councilman Sanchez's question about standards, how will we roll best value throughout the rest of the administration?
So what happens is when the procurement department sees an opportunity, they actually have been proactively reaching out to the department. So we're not necessarily leaving it to the departments. We are extending ourselves and basically having discussions about, we think this is a great opportunity for them. We envisioned starting small because this was such a big change, and so we have two. I think we need to get a couple more under our belt, and then I think we're going to start getting into a rhythm.
And so is that for next fiscal year? Is that the plan?
So we wanted to get one or two up by the end of last calendar year, and then we said 6 to 12 this year. That was our goal.
Okay, and then when procurement is identifying various opportunities, are they receiving pushback from the department to say, no, this is not a good opportunity for best value? How is that occurring?
I think they've been pretty receptive. I mean, a lot of instances, it's been a professional service, and there's also a supply or good component to it. So it just naturally is a best value opportunity anyway. So I think the conversations are going well. I think change is hard generally, and so I think people are just adopting the change. I'm not sure I would attribute it to anything more than that, at least my experience in the government.
Looking at your Office of Open Data and Digital Inclusion, and you state in your testimony on page 2 to help departments make government services more transparent and accessible to the public through technology and human-centered design methods. How is that moving forward with the redesign of the city website? And then how will you use that in other aspects of city government going forward?
So if Tim Wisniewski is here, I'm going to ask Tim to come up and speak about that.
Good morning. Tim Wisniewski, Director, Office of Open Data and Digital Transformation. Councilman, I apologize, but I didn't quite hear your question in full. Would you mind repeating it?
How are you using the process of the redesign of city websites on other initiatives throughout the city?
The process of the redesign of the website on other initiatives throughout the city. Okay, thank you. So one example I would say is an initiative that kicked off at the beginning of the year as the result of funding from the Knight Foundation. We're partnering with the Mayor's Policy Office to launch what we're calling the Phl Participatory Design Lab. And the idea is we'll use evidence-based design to help improve city services for the people who interact with them and the people inside of government who fulfill those services. The two types of services are service design and behavioral science. Those are the methods that we're employing. So we're partnering with the Office of Homeless Services as well as the Revenue Department. On the homeless services side, the focus is the homeless intake process, and so we have our deputy director and our service designer have been out in the field at the two homeless intake centers in the city, as well as several other sites throughout the city where people experiencing the homeless intake system interact with government. And their focus has been to try to understand the pain points from the perspectives of people experiencing homelessness, as well as the frontline staff who interact with folks, and all the way up to the top levels of the Office of Homeless Services to try to brainstorm with them where are the gaps and where are opportunities for intervention. So to answer your question more specifically, there is several types of design methods that we use, and it ultimately amounts to evidence-based design. So rather than coming in with our assumptions about how do we improve the homeless intake system, instead we would work with the staff from the Homeless Services Department as well as the people experiencing homelessness to come up with those methods together using, to come up with those interventions together using design methods.
Are you also, regarding that initiative, are you also working with non-city providers like a Project Home or others who are involved in that space?
You know, I'd have to get back to you on all of the stakeholders involved. I know we work most closely with staff from the Office of Homeless Services, DBH, IDS, as well as the intake centers themselves.
But you would agree that would make sense to work with other providers who are in the space, so it's not just how the city is interacting with intake, but we're also getting best practice from providers who are also in the field and working with people who are homeless.
Sure. Do you mind if I call up Leanna? Leanna, would you mind? I'm just going to call up our Deputy Director and Service Design Practice Lead, who's been overseeing these efforts from the ODDT side.
Hi, Leanna Ragaman, Deputy Director, Office of Open Data and Digital Transformation. So one of the key methods that we're using is service design. And before you even start the process, you really map out all of the stakeholders, both internal to government, but as you know, the Office of Homeless Services partners with they have a service provider network. So as we've gotten out into the field, as Tim mentioned, we've interacted with people accessing and using the services, people who are on the front line of delivering those services within OHS. But then we've also gone to the different engagement hubs run by Project Home, the different cafes that are run by different service provider nonprofits, as well as emergency housing shelters. So we've been pretty comprehensive in our discovery phase, but throughout the year we'll continue to prototype and collaborate and interact with different stakeholders that are relevant to the prototypes that we develop with the Office of Homeless Services. So we'll have additional opportunities to bring on stakeholders inside government, outside of government to continue to make improvements. So we've been pretty comprehensive in how we've been working with the Office of Homeless Services as well as those that sit outside of government.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some additional questions. I'll come back in the next round.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I have a few questions, if I get my bearings straight here. But one, we talk about reaching out with our new systems and policies that we have in our CIO department when it comes to procurement and reaching out to emerging vendors, right? What is your outreach plan? I know you had mentioned there was a significant plan in place last year. How did that go, and have you seen an increase of people bidding or wanting or showing interest, expressing interest in either contracting or procurement, or which we'll talk about later, but professional services and contracts?
So we did have a robust outreach plan last year. Obviously, we're continuing to do that. It's not just the CAO's office, it's all of the procurement department, the contracts unit. There's several of us that speak at events and want individuals to know the city's open for doing business, and also some of the work we're doing to assure potential vendors that we are looking to simplify and doing business with the city easier. So that is continuing, and we are seeing, ever so slightly, but we are seeing an uptick in the amount of proposers. It's not been significant, it's maybe been one or two, but the numbers are trending in the right direction. So I think that talking about how we are invested in simplifying the way folks do business with us, creating more transparency has really been helpful, and I really think being able to do business with us electronically and not having to physically get in your car and drop the contracts off in a city office has made a big difference.
And that comes to just continuing to educate and outreach to, whatever kind of association or groups that are out there, to let people know. I want to talk if you're doing good, I want people to know that you're doing good, because I believe in and have believed in the mission of the CAO's office.
Thank you, Councilman.
But we need to, as council members, as Councilman Dom, talks about all the time, we need to not necessarily call fiscal note, but see what kind of return we have on our investment with technology, or, maybe we're better off remaining paper, which we are not. All right, things are much quicker with technology and more efficient. All right, but it would be nice to know that when we move to these newer systems, and we do see a change in behavior and have, more engagement, all right, that you quantify that, all right, and it's just better for communication and information for you sharing, the office sharing with us as members. So if you can, put dollars to the amount of savings and efficiencies, that includes administrative costs. So if you have $4 million in overhead just on labor, all right, well, how much of that is less doing certain things, and how much? So there's a way to present it, and I'm not going to speak for Councilman Tom, but that's what I would like to see, because
our goal is to get there. I just think it's more of a long-term goal to get there. I mean, obviously, there's been so much opportunity to create efficiencies. It's been helpful to redirect folks and where they're spending their time, rather than picking up a phone and literally chasing down a piece of paper.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, so that's really been, I think, our focus.
Postage alone,
Right.
I know members, talk about a lot. I mean, it can be very expensive. On page 2 of your testimony, you state that the department has been holding career fairs. Maybe 5,000 people have passed through, and that's a human resources and talent department, or at least program. What is the efficiency and effectiveness have you had in helping our departments fill some of its jobs in a multitude of levels?
So the great thing about the career fair, and maybe Jackie Litton can join me, I'll kind of tee it up a little bit, is it's a partnership not just for all of the city agencies, but even the quasi-city agencies. So SEPTA, there's been other organizations that have participated. It's really been a great venue for these employers, including our city departments, to attract employees in a very one-stop shopping way, and also, again, just seeing that the city is open and does want to hire within its community. So I'm going to let Jackie give more details on that.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Linton. I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for HR and Talent. So we hosted the career fair over the last 2 years, and last summer it was upwards of 5,000 people that attended. And the focus really wasn't about efficiency, it was really about giving people opportunities to really access positions that the city had, as well as some of our quasi-agencies as well. SEPTA was there, PGW, the State Department was there, and it was about giving people the opportunity to access those things, as well as we held workshops for people in terms of reviewing their resume. We had computers set up so that they could apply online for any of those positions that were being offered by the vendors there. So, we're really trying to do this as a resource for the community so that we can provide more access and support for those people who are looking for new jobs or for their first job.
Well, I think it's great and necessary. What were the results? When I speak of the efficiencies, I was alluding to, what kind of tangible results that we had. Have we hired anybody?
Yeah.
All right. And is it a successful model moving forward?
So, in terms of the positions that we had available, as you know, in the civil service process, it's not always easy to connect an event with when someone actually gets hired, just because of the length of time between those two activities. So, we do have in our HR system the ability for people to indicate that they heard about the job through the career fair. But the time is long, and I can't really say that we've had a number of people who have said, yes, I heard about it from the career fair. But again, it's not just the jobs that we have to offer. What we really want to do is to expand it to other employers as well that may have a shorter timeline.
Okay, we'll talk offline to dig into the weeds a little bit more on that.
Okay.
I have a question on page 19 of the budget, section 20, line under contracts, 250 professional services. Is the $2.2 million, is that for the parking amnesty that you discussed?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to jump over to OAR. We have some professional contracts. I see John O'Connor down here. Was that a full-time employee? Is that the same O'Connor that was the executive director, or was the supervisor of OAR now is in a part-time role?
So our director of OAR is Melissa Andre, and that's full-time. I believe he's a hearing master. We use contract staff for some of the hearing masters in OAR.
So was he a full-time employee before, if you may approach?
I'm not sure.
Hello, my name is Melissa Andre, Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Review.
Hey, how are you?
John O'Connor was a part-time hearing master. He mainly does all of my PPA red light camera hearings that we do.
Okay, so he's always been part-time. Is there another O'Connor, or is it the same O'Connor that would come and testify?
The previous executive director of the Office of Administrative Review was Paula Weiss.
Paula Weiss, right.
Yes, so
yeah.
no, I don't think
Not executive, supervisor.
No, he was just hired this year as he was an independent contractor to do hearings. Apologize.
Okay, so you went to contracting.
Yes.
How long have you been contracting hearing officers or masters?
I would say from the beginning. It's been around for almost 30 years, so we've always contracted our hearing masters. Mm-hmm. We only have one part-time hearing master, and we have a full-time as well, but they do different things.
Okay. The chair recognizes Councilman Dunn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo Councilman Heenan's comments, and I think that what we should be doing going forward on any purchase of technology or anything else, usually, in the private sector, before you buy anything, you look at what the return payback period is. Is it payback in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Example, 10 years is a 10% payback. So I think what we should be doing going forward is doing those analyses and figuring out what is the payback on this investment, and then that savings that pays back, how does that apply towards the budget? Just as a suggestion, I think that's a good way to look at this. That's how the private sector looks at it. And we really, in that area, I don't think we're that much different. Second question, just a general question. You may have mentioned this already, but right now, if I'm a contractor or a supplier and I submit a bill to the city, what is the average time it takes us to pay that bill?
So that is a good question, which is why Dwayne is leading the prompt pay project. I envision this being a very large project, and depending on the department, the process looks different. It is predominantly a paper process. What we do know is that by the time the invoice is submitted to finance is very efficient in how they pay it.
But let me ask you the question this way. I'm a contractor.
Yep.
I want to do business with the city. I ask the question, how long is it going to take me to get paid? What's the answer?
Go ahead.
Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy CAO. So it just depends. What we're finding out is that there are a number of issues on the very front end. So we're not seeing consistency with the submission of the invoices. That's the first thing. The second thing is that they're sending a batch of invoices to wrong departments. So those departments are tasked with then sorting the invoices out and making sure it's dispersed to the correct departments. From there, there are incomplete items on the invoices. There are a lot of miscellaneous things that are wrong with them. So it kicks it out and it has to go back to be completed. So what we're seeing is that there are various types of delays. So we can get an invoice paid short end about 30 days, long end about 120, 180 days. So it just varies. Once we have everything in place and that's correct, once it makes it to finance, we're seeing about a 2 to 3 week turnaround. So we can fix the front end, we should see on average about a 30-day turnaround.
Now, I heard about this problem last year, and a full year has gone by. And I'm going to tell you that if I was a contractor and you gave me that answer, I probably would not want to do business with the city of Philadelphia, okay? Because I can't afford to wait 6 months to be paid. I have to pay my employees, I have to pay my insurance, I have to pay all my overhead. That's really not an acceptable answer to contractors or suppliers, 180 days.
So one of the things that we have to do better as from a city perspective is educating the contractors on what's needed, right? So one of the things that we can do better from a city perspective is educating the contractors on what's needed, right? So if we do a better job of, as far as educating, we should see a more smoother process so we don't have these issues that we have to fix. And I think, again, if we focus on the front end, I think it has to be a partnership where the ownership has to be on the contractors and the city because there are issues with both. So I think we have to just focus on education as primary.
Also, Councilman, I think that's why we're taking on this project this year. I mean, last year, we knew the contract conformance process impacted it. We tried to address it that way, but now it's time to look at invoicing. And so we're doing that in partnership with the Commerce Department, with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and the Finance Department. But we agree with you, it's a problem.
I understand that, but you're not you specifically, but we're being asked to approve an increase of the budget of dramatic proportions, okay? And the issue I have is when we're not managing our finances well, I don't see how we can give you more money if we're not managing the current money that well. Because I'm going to say to you right now, if I'm a contractor doing work for the city, I'm going to build in an interest cost and carry for 6 months or longer based on how we pay bills, which is really costing us a lot more money to do business with anyone else because of our processes.
So I think the good news is we're looking at it and we're committed to doing something by the end of the year.
And I think that's great, but end of the year is too late. I heard this last year. You know, I say this in business. The most valuable employee in your business is that person who views your money as if it's theirs. Mm-hmm. And we need that in government. We have to view this as if it's ours, and it is ours, okay? But taking 180 days to pay a bill is insane. I'll come back, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Just point of information, just a little confused on, so the councilman's line of questioning is spot on. I believe I asked similar questions earlier, but had a different answer. And I'm not sure where we lie at this point. I mean, I know we're improving and we're working towards. Are you able to quantify, all right, and and provide to the chair like how many days, all right, has been approved with the e-signature program that we have? And you went from prompt pay conversation earlier when I asked the questions, because it is important, because people have to float payrolls, especially, you're talking about bringing, I asked the emerging vendor and contractor question for a reason, right? Now, if they're not getting paid, they're not going to be able to support it unless they have a partner, all right, who can float their payroll, all right? And we're trying to get more vendors and services online quicker and easier, and they just can't do it. So 74-day pay as opposed to 120-some day pay was what I was given earlier, and under 30 days for certain other procurement projects.
So that's contract conformance time,
Right.
which we cannot pay a vendor until we have a conformed contract. So I believe I referenced having, this problem has a lot of tentacles, so to speak.
Right.
And so one of the problems was contracts. It's not the only problem. There's also problems with the invoicing process, which is what we're taking on this year.
On whose end? Like,
I think on both.
What are some of your challenges? Is it vendors providing information? Is it the city getting lost in the shuffle between the departments? And does that hold up the e-sig signature, technology to make things move quicker? I mean, so where are there challenges?
So all of the above, and there is no e-sig when it comes to invoicing. So when you get a paper invoice, some departments it goes to the project manager, other departments it goes to their accounts payable unit. They have an internal approval process because you have to make sure the contractor do the work, so the person has to sign off on it. Then there's typically a paper process, whether it's a cover sheet or they actually sign the invoice. Then it has to go back to the accounts payable. They have to do things in the systems, and then it has to get sent to finance. Then finance has to review it, make sure everything's there. There's times where invoices are not properly prepared. They don't have everything they need. So I think Dwayne referenced an educational opportunity on the vendor side. I think that is certainly one thing we're looking at, we're exploring. But I think this is an enterprise approach and something we're going to have to look at implementing across the government.
Well, I think so, because, if we have this robust outreach to communities that may not have, even thought about bidding on any kind of city projects, and, the councilwoman and other members here would talk about it all the time, where we only have one or two people bid, whether it's procurement or professional services or as a vendor, that they feel comfortable, like we're not going to be able to bid. Like, what's wrong with our outreach? Is what I'm asking. If they don't understand what's expected, the city's expectations of them to work through, and then of course on our end. So it's just, if you could provide to the chair, some of the improvements that we've made, the outreaches we've had, and the progress, as we move forward, and where you think we go. I mean, in your testimony, you talk about 50%, executed contracts, in streamlining. All right, so I mean that's good. It's a quite of an improvement. But when you get down to the neighborhood level and giving people opportunities, and you have a robust outreach program, what is the ask for them? This is what is expected of you to do business with us, so we could not bankrupt you.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to do, I agree with you. So I'm happy to provide that information.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, talk a little bit around diversity in our workforce in light of the report that came out around exempt employees, but I want to look at civil service employees. What is your role in the goal setting and operations of HR right now?
So right now, our role is to partner essentially with human resources. We partner with the Civil Service Commission and with the HR director.
Is Beto here? Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Can I get the HR director up here real quick for a minute? I want to thank you, and I know that later on as you testify, you'll talk a little bit about some of the issues and some of the progress you've made around diversity. So I want to ask both of you, the numbers are still extremely low department by department, right? Particularly and this is on the exempt side, let alone the civil service side. Notwithstanding the rule of two, which is a topic that both Councilwoman Parker and Blondell Reynolds Brown have come to fruition, what are we doing about, how are we looking at who gets disqualified from that? Are we monitoring people who get disqualified because of job specifications? And how is that in helping you inform counseling departments as they post jobs?
Good morning. Pedro Rodriguez, Director of the Office of Human Resources. Councilwoman, this is one of the things we begin to address in looking at the disqualification pool. As you know, before individuals respond and show an interest on taking an exam for civil service, they had to meet the minimum qualifications for the jobs as stated in the job specifications that we work together with the departments to establish. We run through thousands and thousands of applications every year. It's a rigorous process, and we try to stick to the spirit and the letter of the job specification.
So how are we informing the job specification process with departments? Because, departments are really quick to throw you under the bus, right? I'm just being real clear, because every time they can't meet the numbers, and I ask, why isn't this a bilingual position? Why isn't they always say HR? So how is, in light of the fact that there are a lot of applicants being disqualified, how are you using that to inform them so their minimum requirements, and by the way, this is not at our partners in 33 and 47, because when I talk to them, it's not their issue. It's like, so how many job descriptions do we have? How outdated are they? And how are we informing them so this minimum standard, right, is looked at in a broader context?
Councilwoman, we have over 1,000 job titles with a specific job description for each one of them. We don't do the work, so we invite the departments to, we sit down with them twice a year for workforce planning, and they go over how many exams they want to do, how many entry level, how many promotional exams. We always take the opportunity to ask if there's any reviews of specific job specs, so we can address it before the exam is announced. We are doing more in-depth conversations and work in cooperation with the Chief Administrative Office to kind of help the departments be more judicious when they're planning, so they understand what the work, if the work has changed. I mean, we don't do the work, the departments do.
But skills assessment, so and I'll use this department, not that I want to pick on them in particular, but because they're kind of in the public eye, in the rec department, and I know that Catherine and them have worked really hard at creating this community worker position, to try to get more diversity. But the fact of the matter is, the rec leader position that requires that you be a nutritionist and all this other stuff has limited our ability to have a diverse program staff at rec. 70% of their program workforce is white, right? And the neighborhoods are very different. So where's the intersect there around, we have qualified people that may carry some of those same skills, don't have that specific degree. Have you seen movement in some of those?
Councilwoman, there has been a more awareness since the administration came on board to kind of be concerned about what expectations you're setting out when you do job announcements. And there are conversations with our unit to kind of work in developing job descriptions that reflect the work that's being done. And I agree with you that some of the job descriptions that we have are outdated in terms of that's not what people do on a day-to-day basis, so that needs to be changed. But that's a conversation that individually with every department and going over and reviewing every position as we can. We began that process. In some departments it's deeper than in others, but I think that's something that we're committed to doing.
I'm very concerned about the urgency in this because over the last couple of years, we have staffed up in departments, right? And so we're adding a workforce and we may not get another shot with the pending kind of attrition and retirement. We may not get another shot at those apples. So I guess my question to you, and I don't know when the council women are going to have their hearing, is, is there a matrix that you're following about what testing is coming up and what are the denials that are happening, and who's asked for a modification, right? Because again, when I go to the Civil Service Commission folks, they're like, we're very open to departments coming in, right, and changing, but if we don't get the request from the department. So again, this is one of those things, what goes first?
Exactly. And then, yeah.
So Councilman, I could talk HR with you all day long. It's like one of my favorite topics. So I think we need a paradigm shift. And I think we're at a point where we want to do a paradigm shift. And what most companies do, including the federal government, is the KSAs, the knowledge of skills and abilities, are not the gospel, right? So sometimes that 20 years experience is equivalent to that bachelor's degree. And so we need to, I think we as HR leaders need to start the conversation and engage the departments to let them know it's okay. We just have to align on what good looks like in each individual instance. So I'm happy to say our partnership, we're looking to make some changes this year. I'm thrilled about it. This is where I'm really jazzed about it. And I really think we have an opportunity to make a difference. It's really also about sourcing. That's usually the name of the game. The more people you can get from diverse backgrounds and experiences, the better off your delivery of service to your customers are going to be.
And my time is up, but I want to go back to the fact that the unwillingness to use bilingual selective factor by all the departments is troubling to me in light of what we're saying. So on my next round.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have, in your testimony on page 6, I had some questions maybe you could answer for me. It talks about the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication. I just wanted to make sure I understand the information. It talks about performance measures, and it's talking about average number of days from receiving a hearing request via regular mail to making a decision by a hearing officer. And it says that our target is 45 days. We're currently at, I guess, around 52.
Yes.
So does that mean that, I just want to make sure I understand, this is someone sends in a letter to us and our decision takes 52 days?
So someone will either go online and request a hearing or send a letter in. And, I probably should let Dwayne answer this. No, you okay? And then we schedule them for a hearing. The in-person hearings we're tracking close to target. Where we're seeing challenges is on the web hearings. And so there's an opportunity to...
Yeah, but I guess that's my question. When I look at this information, people send in a letter to the city, it's 52 days.
No, I'm sorry, you respond, and then the hearing gets scheduled within those 52 days.
Okay, but when they do it online, it takes 91 days?
It is taking longer. We're having delays in the web hearings.
Why would it take longer on the web than
Because if you're currently booted or towed, you have the right to get an immediate hearing. So walk-ins are not, they're anticipated, but they're a significant amount of time. And so that impacts your ability to schedule. And so what happens is when you get a lot of walk-ins, the folks on the portal doing the web hearings, they get pulled off to address the walk-ins.
So why wouldn't we have separate people just doing the online stuff?
So that's what we're exploring right now. And we're also exploring doing another shift to cover Saturdays. So we have longer hours on Saturdays, which our customers are asking for.
So give me an example of a hearing request. Somebody gets what is this for exactly?
A ticket, a parking ticket.
Someone gets a parking ticket. they send in a letter saying what, I'm disputing it?
You basically, you get a letter, well, you have a ticket, and then you can check whether you want to respond a hearing or not. And so, yeah, you can dispute it.
And then it takes us 52 days to schedule that hearing?
Yes.
And how many hearings a day does one person handle?
So it varies depending on the complexities of that particular hearing. They can hear anywhere between 15 upwards to about 25.
Seems to me that needs to be sped up pretty dramatically. That's way too long. The mail-in is 52 and the online is 91 days, 3 months?
We agree. And that's why we're looking at BA right now.
So what can we expect a year from now on these numbers?
So one of the things that we're starting right now is doing an operational review. And so we're looking at the time conformance, we're looking at average number of days, we're looking at everything. We're also looking at implementing consistencies as far as procedures, processes, and guidelines. So what we believe right now, just looking at the numbers, is that we can incrementally get that down over the course of a year from 45 down to 30.
Shouldn't both be 30 days at a maximum?
Right. So we're going to explore the numbers. I can't commit to anything beyond the 30 days. With the web, we're going to shoot to have it be consistent.
And I understand. I'm just looking for you guys to commit to 30 days. When you come back next year, both of these are at 30. But I will say what troubles me is that encouraging people to use the internet is taking almost twice as long for a response, which should be the reverse.
We agree. And we need to look at what that engagement looks like digitally. I don't disagree with you, and we're looking at it.
Okay. I have another question for you. Since you oversee 10 departments, are you involved with fringe benefit costs?
I'm not.
Not? Okay.
No, it's mainly HR with finance.
You're not involved with that at all?
No, I'm not.
Is there any way, are you involved with the preparation of the budgets or the information that we receive?
No, that's the finance, the budget office does that.
Okay. My time's up.
We'll keep
Okay.
continuing.
I just want to ask this question then. Is there a way going forward, since it's administrative to me, to incorporate on these budgets the actual fringe benefit cost and city overhead cost per employee? Because I've been told the fringe benefit costs of the city is between 88 and 89% of every dollar we pay, and the city overhead is 37 cents for every dollar we pay. So the reason why I wanted to incorporate it is because when we look at a payroll of $4 million, it's really not $4 million. It's probably closer to $9 million when you include all the overhead. And I don't think people understand that. And it's an administratively, to look at that, I think would be an eye-opener.
I'm happy to share the information with budget. I'm just not involved in those conversations.
Okay. I'm going to
Thank
stop.
you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We're gonna hang around. All right. We'll catch you on the second round. I have a couple questions since we're on our second round. So one, I'm going to apologize to the executive director for the BEAA about my question about one of our part-time contract employees. It was more geared towards Jerry Connors.
Yes, Mr. Connors
Okay.
retired.
Okay, so everybody knows of him. I think my district was up in arms, and a lot of people complained about his bedside manners. And so I wanted to apologize for that. It's rare that you get this kind of apology, but where you're wrong, promptly admitted, so I don't want to mislead anybody. He was doing the city a disservice, so that's my personal opinion. Regarding a couple things. One, on page 11, section 20 of your operating budget, in contracts, line 251, you have anticipated a budget of $1.3 million. Is there a description, or could you just comment briefly on that, please? Purchase of services.
I'm sorry, Councilman, can you help me? Which?
On the fiscal operating budget under OAR.
OAR. Okay, got it.
page 11, section 20,
Okay. Yep.
professional services and for IT.
Yep. So that is the contract that it's currently with Conduit, and that's how they send all the notices. It's essentially the entire suite of how we track and notify and cashiering, all of those functions for OAR's notices.
So anything that OAR is responsible for, CVNs, parking, or whatever, they all go through this system?
Well, they don't have parking tickets. BAA has the parking tickets. They have the red light tickets. And then they have like a streets department citation.
Right, which is the CVNs, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what goes through that.
Okay, so in the future, I'm just going to throw this out there. I've had conversations publicly about this, just years ago regarding CVNs and NOVs. Now we are moving towards an office, that data warehouse, Office of Property Data. I'm not sure exactly which one, but they both sound really nice. And you're going to be able to give a profile of an address.
Yep.
Could we take a look at some of the CVNs and some of these notices that go through the BAA in some of that data warehousing, so we know where, who we're dealing with, whether it's an absentee landlord, whether it's, a bad neighbor, somebody that's just willfully, or we could even discover that we have a notice issue, when it comes to somebody habitually, not receiving or responding to any notifications. Sometimes notice service becomes an issue. And I just want to out of the details like this, you might be able to discover that. I also notice with the BAA that you're doing Saturday hours. Would you consider, 1 day a week up in the 6th District, offering to our constituents after work hours for 2 hours for the BAA to be available at one of our at our mini city hall? So I'm just throwing it out there for future consideration, because I think we would be a little more, we would get a lot more respondents. I think if people could come in, maybe have one of these part-time examiners hear something 1 day a week, or once a month, every third Thursday or something like that.
Let us take a look at that.
Yeah.
And then we're happy to follow up. I just want to make sure it's resourcing.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
I'm not
but-
looking for an answer. I'm
Yep.
just throwing it out there
Okay.
again. Why we're doing Saturday hours. We
Mm-hmm.
could do 2 hours, something like that. It'd be great for Northeast Philadelphia. And I know you've been working extensively to updating the website, and your final version of the website will be available by the end of the year. Is that correct?
So we're taking beta to phila.gov by the end of the year. We'll still be working on it in the following calendar year 19 as well, but it's pretty exciting to drop the beta. We were from alpha. It'd be nice to drop beta and just be phila.gov.
Well, that'd be nice. So what are some of the updated features that you're going to provide on the front and back end to help better serve some of the efficiency questions that we have, and how do we anticipate all that moving forward?
Yep, so I'm going to ask Tim Wisniewski to come up.
Hi, Tim Wisniewski, Director of the Office of Open Data and Digital Transformation. So even though we call it beta, it's been live and in production really since its inception. It's the home for 23 departments already, and it's been the home for all the new content. So at the moment, about 47% of web traffic is going to beta. There's still a lot to be brought over, but because of the way we structured the project, we're able to transition from beta to phila.gov in parallel while we're bringing more content over. So it's really like the URL and the homepage is what's going to significantly change. But in parallel to that, we're working with about over 30 departments over the next calendar year and a half-ish. And we've also done a lot in terms of features for the platform. ton of new features, including like action guides, for instance. You may have seen some of them coming out of the mayor's office with key facts and ways to take action about policy initiatives. Event spotlights is a new upcoming feature. We recently redid the whole events page, news and events on the city's website, so that departments can publish different types of content that's really timely. And spotlights for events like, say, the marathon or like the DNC kind of thing, where there's actually a ton of events going on around a particular event. How can we house that in a single template? As well as we've invested a lot inside of programs and initiatives. And if you click on that in the top part of beta.phila.gov, there's a ton that are popping up there. A lot of them came from Parks and Recreation. We did like a 6-month deep dive with Parks and Rec and really help them transform their online presence. We help them build a finder application to find rec centers and all the activities that happen at those rec centers in your neighborhood, thanks to significant financial investment from Parks and Rec. So yeah, there's a lot of program pages on there. Working on one right now around opioids. There's content around how to get Narcan and trained on Narcan. So a ton of really helpful, what we call service pages, things like becoming a foster parent or getting immunizations if you don't have health insurance. So we've been able to like work with departments on their key content faster because of the templates that we have, while we work with them on like the everything part, which can be like tens of thousands of pages.
You've done a great job for many years, and I think it's great to hear. Would you be willing to work with any council members? You know, I'm going to start with myself, with helping with anything to populate some of the content that you're getting out there, because you know the health department. I mean, it's hard. I mean, the health department has a lot of information, but who would go into the health department to look at childhood obesity events and programs, right? Who would even think about going to the wet department to look at a little URL link, all right, that's hidden somewhere? It seems like what you're creating now is a more open and transparent data resource where it can provide people. It's almost like a portal, one-stop shop.
Yeah, I think we believe that interacting with government online should not be a quiz, right, to know which department offers which service. So probably the most significant divergence from previous efforts around the website with beta is this concept of the global navigation. So the services bar at the top drops down, and then you're presented with different categories of services. Now, it is a lot of categories because, frankly, government does a lot of things, especially when it's a city and a county. But there would be a topic around health and human services, a topic around parking, cars, and transportation. And as you dig in, you're presented with those specific services. You can also get there from the health department website, but you don't necessarily have to know that it's
right.
the
And
health
I just used the health department as an example.
Oh, yeah, but
I mean, Parks and Recs are obvious.
Absolutely,
City
absolutely.
Reps is
And
obviously a marathon, and you got the Dadville, regatta that's coming up. They're Welcome America. They're the real large, events that I think that not only are advertised on websites and social media buys, but with TV.
Yeah.
In some cases, but would love to sit down to get a little more information and see how we could contribute.
Yeah.
All right, to some of the things that are going on civically. All right, in all our neighborhoods.
That would be great, especially if there's services that people are coming to you for that they're not finding on the website. Maybe we could highlight them or surface them a little better.
That's right.
And the
a lot
best
of people
part,
doing a lot of good things here.
Thank you.
All
I think the best part is that these departments that we're working with, nobody's saying, no, that needs to live on my department. Like, everybody's on board. The health department's been great partners. Parks and Rec's been fantastic. Everybody wants their information up there and easily accessible. So it's really just a matter of getting through all of the content. It's really the transitioning that content is a huge undertaking.
Also,
so thank you.
We're counting on you. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
I'm going to ask the HR director to come back up so we can talk a little bit around the bilingual selective factor. And this administration has done great reporting out. Our budget presentations have gotten better around new hires, salary. We've been able to look at salary discrepancies, and we have a lot of room in there. In fact, if you look at your own department, there's quite a spread between minority workforce and others. But I've talked to some of the departments, Fire Commissioner has been very open, and I know he gets through his list. Police Department, they've just not made a decision around the bilingual selective factor. I mean, I ask the Commissioner every time he comes before me. One of the departments is staffing up that has not made a commitment to utilizing it, and I see some disparity, has been the Prisons Commissioner. So what are we doing with our uniform workforce? What's been the discussion, and how have you guys informed some of their policies? As again, in the next couple of years, we're staffing up in all of these departments and their unwillingness to use bilingual selective factor.
Pedro Rodriguez, Director of the Office of Human Resources. Councilwoman, I can tell you that we have been working very closely with the fire department, especially with this fire commissioner who's committed to diversifying the department, on providing pool of applicants that are diverse and can be successful through the academy, not just through the testing process, but through the academy and becoming full-fledged firefighters and paramedics. The last exam that we provided did not yield the desired outcome that we expected in terms of diversity. So we're doing a thorough analysis of what happened, and we are working together to try to figure out how we move forward for the next exam announcement. We're working together with them. As you know, the police department controls all of the hiring process internally. We collect the applications, and we vet the candidates for the minimum age requirement and the minimum education requirement, and after that we provide all that information, that list, to the police department, who then go and do their process.
Okay, so I'll make sure to question the police commissioner, particularly on the drop-offs, where people get disqualified, background, and other places. As it relates to the correctional officers, last year, and I don't know what the response will be this year, when I questioned about the diversity among that workforce, I got a very timid response for them. What are, if anything, is going on to ensure diversity as they staff up and test up?
Councilwoman, we have been working closely with Commissioner Blanche Carney, the Department of Prisons, to provide larger pools of applicants. In the past, the department only asked for a limited number of people, and we knew historically through attrition how many people drop off between the time that they get called in and invited to the academy. So we're providing chunks of about 400, 500 candidates for them to begin and select for the specific classes that they want to start. That has helped them fulfill the goals of having full academies graduate every time. They're doing multiple academies every year now. And in that process, that pool of candidates is diverse in a sense.
But what's the unwillingness with people to use bilingual selective factor?
That is up to the departments to ask you to do it. We're more than happy to assist them. We maintain the classification system for the city, and then every time during that maintenance process, part of our obligation, we always consult with departments to see if they wanted to expand all their eligibility criteria.
So you provide them with their bilingual list even if they don't request it, or?
They have to request the bilingual list.
So they have to request it?
Yes. The department asks, we need bilingual staff to fulfill specific jobs. So they would like us to have that and provide that, and we go out and do it. And just I just want to shout out to the budget department, because they've been helpful on giving you all that data that now you have available to you. And I think that will force departments to be, I think, more proactive in thinking outside the box and trying to fulfill the commitment this administration has had to diversity and inclusion throughout the workforce.
Yeah, again, it's really hard because I know that the mayor's really committed to it. I just don't see the same will within departments to make it happen, right? So he's putting all his political equity out there, talking about diversity, You continue to see this disparity in salary. You continue to see it at, let alone the leadership, right? I mean, I can look at every one of these departments and it's sort of like, I'll sound like a broken record here all day, right? Saying the same thing. But many times when we get to the granular issues, they use HR as, well, this couldn't get done, this couldn't get done. And so maybe we should have a public discussion about how are we reviewing our job specs? How do we do, as Christine mentioned, a better assessment around skills needed for these jobs, because the jobs have evolved. What people used to do in those jobs versus now has evolved, and how do we make sure that if we're disqualifying large pools of qualified folks, right, because of the way, the narrowness of some of this, how do we look at all of those things, right, to get to ultimately to the goal that the mayor, I believe, is really committed to, right?
And Councilwoman, I agree that this is something that is doable, but it would take, I think, looking at all the steps in the process to make sure that we're all aligned with that, and there is commitment in the leadership in the departments to do this. And right now it's a question of executing that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just want to remind everybody before we continue on our questioning that we do have some other departments that are in line. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you very much. I certainly want to agree with all my colleagues said that the women are fighting for this whole issue of inclusion. I want to thank you and Councilman Dobb on the issue of vendors. I don't know when I haven't received complaints, and I've had so many people who are excellent vendors and who are doing fine, but they won't do business with the city because of this time frame. And this whole issue of third issue I wanted to mention was certainly the parking authority, and we're going to have hearings again early in May with regard to people filing against tickets or filing against being charged. They want to appeal the charges, and we're going to ask that when we have those hearings, that those who are responsible come with when they'll be able to get their return. We don't want them to appeal and win, and they're supposed to get their money back. We don't want that to be 100 days too, for money that they've had to pay for traffic tickets that the court says they shouldn't have had to pay and they're innocent of. So we want you all to be ready for that as well. Thank you, Miss. I'm happy to have that discussion with anybody who would like it as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair now recognizes Councilman Dobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go back to page 7, I think it is, of your budget testimony. It says Office of Administrative Review at the top. Talks about fiscal year 19 performance matters. The numbers on the right, are those days or months? Where it says time between violation issued date and first notice for handwritten CVNs, and it says actual 6, target 6.
I'm actually going to ask Melissa to come up because she's more, she's closer to the information.
Melissa Andre, Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Review. Can you repeat your question? I'm so sorry.
Sure. Page 7 of the today's testimony, it talks about time between violation issued date and first notice for handwritten CVNs. And my question is that days or months? It says fiscal year 17 actual 6.
Those are weeks. The measure is weeks for the CVNs, and then for the Tax Review Board, it's months.
So it's 6 weeks, but on the taxes, it's months?
Correct.
Okay. And are these mostly related to parking tickets, the weeks?
No. So at the Office of Administrative Review, we handle an array of different types of appeals and the hearings that go with the appeals. So the CVNs are for the code violations that are issued by all sorts of departments, streets, police, that sort of thing. And the Tax Review Board is petitions to appeal certain taxes, interest, and penalties that the city, mainly revenue, issues. So,
Why,
water.
those are taking months, like 5 months it takes for us to look at that?
Well, the petition takes 7 to 10 business days upon actually being applied for us to process it into our system. And then we do have a very high volume of petitions being filed in the office. So, for instance, if you look at the chart, water, we've adjusted our schedule because we got an influx of water petitions. For instance, April, after the water amnesty is taken off, we get a gigantic influx of water petitions because everybody would like to stop the shutoffs of their water. For instance, right now, it's April, so no one's filing any business taxes, but come July, we'll get an influx of that. So what we do at the office is really try to adjust our calendar and adjust our schedules to take into account each type of petition and the ebbs and the flow that occur based on the petitions.
This seems like a long time, 5 months.
We really try to keep it down, but we have limited space. We have limited hearing officers, so we really try to get them in within 3 months. But sometimes it's difficult. We only have 2 hearing rooms, and we try to. And it's not just that. Like, we have almost 6 different categories, so we have to really adjust how long, and how we schedule everybody.
Who determines how many hearings an officer hears at one per day?
I would say I do. For instance, we had a new hearing master, and I tried not to overwhelm her with the types of hearings. But for instance, water petitions, my hearing master has been doing it for many years. I could put 20, 25 hearings on for him. But certain cases also take a very long time to go through all of the issues. So business tax cases, we usually have a lower list because those are more involved. It's more with revenue, looking at specific information and tax returns. So we try to schedule less than 15. It really depends. It's such a very specific type of hearings for each specific category. We really have to take into account all the details and giving everybody the fair opportunity to present.
Can you do us a favor in the future? Can you, when you list this information, can you also list how many are outstanding to be reviewed?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let me ask a separate question. On the prior testimony, I think we talked about page 6, the performance measures. You said that was related to parking tickets?
I believe that's for the BAA, which deals with parking tickets. At the Office of Administrative Review, the only type of PPA ticket is the red light tickets. We handle those.
Right. But when we're dealing with parking tickets as a city, are we reimbursed by the parking authority for the costs to go through that process?
The parking, the expenses are paid out of the on-street parking revenue.
So it's paid out of there. So that's reimbursed to us, that revenue.
Yeah, so what happens is there's actually state legislation about how the PPA pays the city. And in the legislation, it acknowledges removing the expense of the BAA.
Okay. Well, why couldn't we increase that budget from the parking authority to speed up the process of these hearings?
So it's state legislated. It's actually, it specifically lays out what the parking authority has to pay the city. And then the difference, the remainder is paid to the school district. It's actually has to be legislated by the Commonwealth.
Maybe we should change that because we might need more money. We don't want to spend our own money on parking revenue that's going to PPA. It should all come from them.
I mean, the more money we can give the school district, we agree with you.
Okay. I just want to make 2 last comments. The 37% city overhead, I think directly falls in your department. There's fringe benefit overhead of 88 cents, but there's city overhead of 37 cents. And the city overhead is, when you hire a new person, the computers, the phones, the desks, all the services they're supplied with is an allocation of the budget. And I think that's in your department, basically. And so what I'd like you to think about is coming back to us and figuring out, with the finance director, a goal of the next 5 years of how do we lower the 37 cents to 30 cents. It's not a big difference, but it'll make an impact. But over the next 5 years, the same way we're being asked to increase taxes over the next 5 years, let's figure out how we lower the expense from 37 to 30 over the next 5 years. Last question. Were you involved at all in the purchase of the Inquirer building on North Broad Street?
No, I was not.
Because two of your departments, OIT and Public Property, were pretty involved.
Yeah, so Ann Fadolin and obviously Bridget for public property, but Ann led it from a cabinet perspective. And then once we're in the process now, I trust OIT, the commissioner, and I trust our public property commissioner. So they provide updates, but they're essentially partnering with the agencies.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't see any other members with their lights on for any further questions. That being done, I want to thank you all for your long and laborious commitment to answering the questions from each member who had them. The chair now will call